Welcome to a special CNN town hall from Secot Prison in El Salvador. I'm Jake Tapper, and tonight Bernie Sanders and AOC discuss a bold voting initiative aimed at giving inmates a voice in our elections. Let's take a listen to the highlights from the town hall.
Listen up, folks. It's a disgrace. You're locked up, but the billionaire class can't lock up your vote. We're smashing voter suppression with ballots without borders, mail-in ballots, Wi-Fi ballots, ballots carved on soap bars. Whatever it takes. Everyone votes. We're taxing Elon Musk to fund your free healthcare and Obama phones. No more handcuffs and shackles. Everyone will get unlimited shanks that are razor sharp. Revolution starts here.
Y'all, the vibes are you unstoppable. Voting's a human right no matter what borders or bars they throw at you. We're announcing prison to polls. No ID, no problem. Your teardrop tattoo or gangbanger tat is your voter ID. Let's flip this prison blue and make every vote count. Who's with me?
Wow. I thought that was brilliant. I was really impressed with that. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the fine program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. So if you follow me on Locals, good for you. If not, shame on you, at goodlogic.locals.com. You know that when I was driving back from my Passover vacation from Virginia Beach, that I tweeted out, I localed out something. I don't know. I did something where you post on Locals, and I said, hey, great news, everyone. Planning on having Great Lawgic in here to talk about the papacy and share with everyone, what that whole his perspective historically about the papacy and things of that nature, because I feel like I know that my dad, the reason he fell in love with history and ended up developing a doctorate in medieval Christian Muslim relations is because he loves stories. He always loves stories, and he has just in his head and in his basement a library of crazy historical stories that few of us know enough about. And many of them, given the coursework that he focused on for his doctorate, relate to the papacy. So I was like, you know what? This is a really good spot for me to bring him on in here. We could do a little reflection, with the passing of the Pope. I think we could do a little reflection here about the papacy. And I thought that that's something that you guys may enjoy. The problem I had was that when I came back home, tried setting up my studio, I had no video, I had no audio. It was a disaster. I had to cancel. And then the next night, I had all this other stuff that was all this other development in the news. And I was like, I got too much to cover. And today there was a little bit more of a lull. It wasn't quite as pressing news out there. So I was like, you know what? I don't think it's too late for me to go back to that. So I reached out to my dad, and he was more than happy to come in here. And that's why I give to you my dad, although you don't have a camera on tonight, Dad, so I'm not sure. But my dad, Dr. Neerman, welcome back, Daddy. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I hear you. You don't have a camera tonight.
I had the camera on. The camera was on before.
No, I actually didn't see it even before. I didn't see it at any point.
Just a second here.
I should have said something to you before the show, but I was.
It was on. I mean, I had. No, that's not it.
My father is popularly referred to while he's trying to figure out, and if you don't end up getting the camera working, that's fine. People recognize your voice, but so don't sweat it too hard, Dad. But
I'm sorry about that. But
no, it's
all
okay.
Right, okay.
It's okay. You have, I think, in a certain way, more of an authoritative tone because it's like the voice coming from the heavens. So
no, it's not from the heaven. All right,
right. But yeah. So I just wanted to. I had something I was going to say. Oh yeah. If you have any questions for my dad, feel free to, throw them out there. Let me know, and he's happy to answer questions for as long as he's here. The other thing I'll tell you is I'm done with the majority of my talking for tonight. I know that everyone gets mad when I don't let my dad talk.
Well, I don't know that I'm going until midnight, but we'll see. We'll see. All right. All right. First, let me just mention that my interest in the church was because I focused on my research on the Crusades. And to understand the Crusades, you have to understand the church. And my professor, one of those was several that mentored me, Professor Marshall Baldwin, while he was alive, he passed away in 1975. He was known as one of the top historians of the Crusades, Catholic historians of the Crusades. And he really mentored me in understanding the church and a lot about Catholicism. I'm going to tell you a cute story, which leaves room for thought, but I think it's a cute story. For many years, I also taught in a public high school, which is a very good high school. And I was teaching the Reformation, which, by the way, in the eyes of those of you who are Roman Catholic, it's the revolt from the Holy Mother Church. They use a different terminology there. And what generally in America, which is a Protestant country primarily, we call the Counter-Reformation, they call the Catholic Reformation. In any event, I was teaching about Martin Luther and one of his major religious changes that he enacted. That was that he changed the nature of what the Roman Church calls the Mass. Basically, that in the Mass, in the Roman Church, historically, there's a process that's known as the miracle of the Mass, colloquially, in which a wafer becomes the body of Jesus, and in which the wine of the celebrant in the chalice or the goblet that he elevates, when he elevates it, it becomes the blood of Jesus. So therefore, to them, it's a miracle, and it's a physical change. The word is transubstantiation. Trans is over. The substance changes.
Right.
Now, Luther changed it to consubstantiation, which means it sort of seems to happen, but doesn't exactly happen. It's symbolic more. Now, of course, in order to understand the difference between Lutheranism and Roman Catholicism, you need to understand the meaning of these two terms. When I was teaching, used to teach there, I always offered a bounty. If you catch me in an error, an historical error, I'll give you 2 points on the next exam. I won't say her last name. This nice little girl, Carolyn, of Italian descent, sitting in the back of the room. So when I defined transubstantiation, remember, physical change, she puts up her hand and she goes, Dr. Neerman, excuse me, but I think it's not really a change. It sort of seems to be a change. So I said to her, that's precisely what Martin Luther said, but she's a Roman Catholic, she tells me. So I said, I believe that's what Martin Luther said. Now I say I believe, I knew. So she said, no. So I said, you know what? I'll tell you what, Carolyn, go home and ask mommy and come back. Next day, Carolyn comes big as life, and she goes, Dr. Neerman, I'm right. Mommy says I'm right. So I said to Carolyn, whatever day it was, Thursday, Friday, you go to church Sunday? Yes. Ask the priest. Monday morning, big as life. All right. Right.
Yeah.
Now, wait, listen to this. Monday, I know she's right. You're right. Wait, let me tell you the story. So she comes in, and this is what she says to me. The priest says I'm right. So I said, what? I thought to myself, huh? So I tell her, okay, here's a note. I write a note to the librarian. Go upstairs, get the Britannica, volume TRANS, and bring it down. Now, this little Carolyn is wearing a bright red sweater. I'll never forget this. This is like 35 years ago. This happened a long, long time ago. And little Carolyn walks in, and little Carolyn's face is the color of the bright red sweater because the Encyclopedia Britannica said exactly what Dr. Neerman has said. So then I said to myself, so why is it that the priest didn't tell her what it really was? And I wonder, I still don't know why. I mean, I have a theory. I don't know if I should express the theory here. But I am certain that Pope Francis, may he rest in peace, Pope Francis II, who took the name Francis because of the Franciscans, that he obviously, when he taught in Argentina, I'll be willing to give you a 90% shot that he gave the proper definition, and that down there they gave the proper definition. Maybe the priest here was afraid that people would not accept the definition. I mean, I don't know. But I found that as a very curious thing. But
I never realized that the prefix trans versus the prefix con is whether it's actually happening or whether it's
con means with the substance. Con in Latin is with, so the substance is still there. Trans means crossing over. Transport in Latin.
So by that logic, so you're saying that in today's spheres where we see so many people are transing over, they're really consing over.
Well, that depends on what you think. They think they're transing over.
But I'm saying
I don't want to get into this. There's a whole other thing. To me, someone who does not have ovaries is not really fully female. And there are discussions of this in the Talmud of women that don't have ovaries, unfortunately, the poor people. And there are all sorts of discussions on that. But that's a different topic. But
I'm just going to ask you, before we abandon this topic, I'm just going to ask you, is there a word consitioning?
What?
Is there a word consitioning as opposed to transitioning?
Conditioning. No, conditioning or transitioning would mean you're changing into something else. Conditioning would mean you're changing, altering, but the substance is the same.
Right. No, I'm just wondering. You used a D after the prefix of con. I was saying it should be like conditioning, not conditioning.
Uh-huh.
So that's I actually think it's pretty funny because it's a far more appropriate term to refer to them as conditioning. I'm gonna embrace that. I'm embracing it. I'm embracing the term conditioning.
Okay.
You may not want it, but I'm definitely going that way.
Anyway, so no, Francis. I want to talk about Francis for a couple of minutes. Francis was, first of all, he was a Jesuit, and I'm going to get into what Jesuits are a little bit later. But Francis is a Jesuit. He was he worked with local people. I believe he took the name Francis because of St. Francis of Assisi, who was very big on humans and on animals and taking care of people. And I think he felt that was his responsibility, and also that the church should be humble. Now, I'm not sure about this. It was a while back, and I remember, though, that and I flipped a little when I heard it, thinking of Francis taking care of the poor and the original St. Francis. And it was very fascinating. Excuse me one second.
He definitely fancied himself a humanitarian.
Right. No, definitely. And in many ways he was.
And while he's considered politically controversial, I think.
Yeah, he is because he was very left in certain things, right, including what you were talking about before. But let me just finish what I'm saying on this. I believe, the Cardinals all came. They came, and I don't know, I think they came in fancy buses and everything over to the consistory in St. Peter's. And after he became Pope, he ordered them not to go in such fancy transport. He says, you are like the fathers of the church. Thank you, sir, Mr. Neurotic, or Mrs. Neurotic. Miss Neurotic, I apologize. All right, thank you. All right. Anyway, so the bottom line is that he really was what you would call, in a way, I'm using my hands, you can't see him, in quotes, the people's pope in a certain sense. And he fancied himself that he's always helping the underdog, so to speak. That led him to do certain things which I disagree regarding what was going on in the Middle East, but I don't want to get into that. This is not tonight for that discussion. That's a whole different discussion. To talk about the Arabs and everything else, that's a different topic. What I would like to do, or was asked sort of to talk about, a little bit about the papacy, the medieval church. I see you're shaking your head. If you have a problem,
I didn't order you. No, I didn't order you any.
But you asked me.
Yeah. I thought it'd be interesting.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned that. Okay. All right. So there are a number of things that happen. If we, first of all, all of those, there are what?
No, I'm sorry. That was on me. Go ahead.
Okay. If someone has something they want to say, and if you think I make a mistake, you're also welcome to comment. All right. Now.
And he'll give you 2 points on the next exam. Someone did have a question for you.
What was the question?
The question, well, there actually are 2 questions. One is the first one that came in was, can Great Logic give a Jewish view on two powers in heaven and divine counsel?
What was the first thing?
2 powers in heaven.
I assume he's talking about Satan and God.
Oh, okay.
I assume he means. Well, I've never used this term. I never heard this term used. Okay. We do believe that there is a negative force. We call it the evil inclination, or it is Satan. It's mentioned in the prophets, and it's theoretically the evil inclination likes to lose. Unfortunately, he doesn't lose very often. He subverts people, and especially into talking things they're not supposed to talk about, which we call improper speech, which means saying nasty things about people. We're supposed to try not to do that. All right, so he's not a power. He's not a fallen angel in the Christian sense of the word. What was the other thing now?
Well, and divine counsel, which I guess means I guess that's referring to God consulting with angels.
Maybe. I think so. Well, now there's a very interesting thing. One of the things that I read about Christianity was it says in the beginning of the Bible, it says in Hebrew, we should make a man in our image. And I understand that Christians interpret this to mean like God was consulting with Jesus or someone.
Because it says we as opposed to I.
It says we, and we understand it to mean that God is humble. God is humble. Right. Some could say it's the royal we, but it isn't the royal we. It's the humble we. Yeah. That's how we understand it. The angels are the messengers of God, and they do what God wants them to do.
I had 2 more questions here. So
yeah.
Rosellian asks on Rumble, Dr. Nierman, what are your thoughts on the Pope's death as proof of the prophecy in the book that talks about all the popes and the rapture being in 2027?
I don't know about this. I don't know about the rapture in 2027. I know there are a number of dates that various people have said various things are going to happen, and by and large, they haven't happened. Although some people try to twist things around to say they happened. There was Nostradamus, and this world to its end will come, and I believe it was in the last century. By the way, I would tell you something, honestly, that I pray there shouldn't be nuclear war, because I pray often for that. Especially on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, because I really believe that nuclear war is a possibility. We know of one instance where the Russians thought we were attacking them because they had a computer glitch, and they ordered a response, and the guy didn't respond because he didn't fire the missiles. And later he was fired because he was not reliable. But if he'd fired the missiles, obviously, we would have fired the missiles, I would imagine, and there would have been a terrible Holocaust. The worst thing that's ever happened since man was man. Yeah.
There's one more comment here. Wellesley saying both the wafer and wine are both
right. The body and blood. Yeah, right. Each are completely him. That's according to transubstantiation. 100%. Yeah, that's a definition of transubstantiation. Right. Okay. That I was told by someone that one must be very careful when he takes communion or takes the Eucharist, which is a technical term, that he should be sure that he doesn't chew on the wafer, because he doesn't want to spit out the Godhead, or if it gets caught in his teeth. That's what he told me. That I was discussing this with someone.
Oh, so that's why. Because I remember seeing in movies that they put it on the tongue. That's why it goes on the tongue, to sort of melt.
That's why it goes on the tongue, so it will dissolve and it'll be fully ingested. That's the concept there. Yeah.
Interesting.
In any event, All right. Now there were a number of church councils. I mean, this means a couple of them. There are many more than this, and many more later on too. In 325 is a Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea did several things. One thing, it articulated the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost, some say. That was articulated in 325. It also condemned a monk named Arius, who said that Jesus was a human being, and it condemned that. And the Arian heresy, interesting enough, that's one of the reasons that Hitler uses the term the Aryan race, because a guy named Ulfius converted the Germanic barbarians to Arian Christianity. They became Aryans. Later, of course, they became Orthodox. But that's where the term comes from. Arianism comes from that. Now, in 381, there was a council in Constantinople that condemned the Nestorians. And one of the councils that I think was very important, is usually not talked about, but really important. And this is the Council of Ephesus, Ephesus, 431. Now, I'll tell you what happened. There's a very interesting fellow. He was a bishop in Alexandria, definitely in Egypt. And this Athanasius was this fellow's name, I think. I don't have notes on this. I'm just talking from what I read many years ago. And there at Ephesus, they pronounced the doctrine called Monophysitism, mono and physite, one form. And I still remember, I mentioned that Professor Baldwin, when I was discussing them with him, I called them the monophysites, and he looks at me and says, huh, what? And I go, I know you know who they are. And he goes, no, they're not monophysites, they're monophysites, like that, you know.
Right.
That's how I learned to pronounce the words that I'd read in the book, you know.
Right.
So monophysites mean that literally Jesus was absolutely God, no Trinity, walking the earth. And you still have today the Coptic Church in Egypt. They believe that. I believe the Armenian Church also believes it. The Ethiopian, the Ge'ez Church believes that. And the Chaldean Church, which was eradicated basically by ISIS, they also used to believe that. We're talking now from 431. It's a long time. They still believed in this. In 451, they reversed this. The Council of Chalcedon reaffirmed the idea of the Trinity and declared the other thing heresy. I'm sure everybody, or most everyone, knows heresy means a false and infamous doctrine. That's the technical meaning of that phrase, heresy. There's a woman who was an historian about 40, 50 years ago. She published, maybe a little more than that, 60 years ago, a book called Death and Life in the 10th Century. Very nice book to read. It's very interesting. Her name was Eleanor Duckett. And she describes, now, I want to start by saying that when I talk about the papacy in a negative way, I am describing things, at least for the next few minutes, that, and you should understand this, that the church itself condemns. That I'm not trying to bash the Pope. I want to make that 100% clear to everybody. And the church bashes these individuals because these individuals did not behave in a proper spiritual manner. So that is why.
So the church would later condemn them.
They are going to be condemned, yes, or were condemned. All right. One of them, actually, the first one was less, shall we say, less not spiritual. In other words, he's fairly spiritual, but what was done to him was very disgusting. And his name is easy to remember. If you know the Taiwan, the Japanese called it Formosa. This was the Pope Formosus, Formosus. He ruled as Pope from 891 until 896, when he died. There were a lot of interventions and political things going on in Rome, and arguments between him and the Pope and the Patriarch in Constantinople. The result of this was that a group of people who hated him seized Rome. and they took his body, they propped it up on a chair, and they had what is known as the cadaver synod, meaning the synod of the dead person. All right. And
well, I don't know what synod means.
A synod normally means a meeting of bishops, but in this case, it was a trial. S-Y-N-O-D. All right. So what happened was that they put him on trial. They declared him a heretic. They chopped up the hand which held the ring of St. Peter. Every pope has that on their finger. And they threw the body into the Tiber River, but it was fished out by some of his supporters and later buried. And the church rehabilitated him. They said these people had acted improperly. Professor Duckett, in her book, talks about something else that is really much less proper. All right. And the people that did this to Formosus are not the church. They were political individuals. But this was the church.
Why was he so hated?
Because there was two factions around there in Rome and then in the north, and the guys come in and invade Rome because he had supported the other guys. So that's why they did this. I mean, in simple terms, that's what happened. Now, there was a family, the Theophylact family. All right. The Theophylact family, wealthy, very wealthy. And there were two women in the family. One was a mama and the other was the daughter. The one who's the more famous of the two was Marozia, M-A-R-O-Z-I-A, or M-A-R-I-Z-Z-A, if you want. And she basically, according to most sources, was the mistress of Pope Sergius III. And she took the title senatrix, meaning the senator, and patricia, which means the master, the female master. Patricius means the guardian or master, and she took, that's the female. Patricia is a Latin form of that term, and she was the mother of someone who later becomes pope, and shall we say, also the friend of one of the other popes. All right, and there are all sorts of terms about this. It's known in the church as the Saeculum Obscurum, which means the dark time, the dark century. Pardon me. Now,
sorry, I didn't mean to distract you. I know when I pull up super chats, it always derails you. So I was sort of waiting for like a little break in you.
Okay, good.
What's up? I never would imagine I would have something in common with Pope, and that is I'm also not Catholic. I hope he enjoys his time in the eighth circle. I think this is not a fan of Pope Francis, right? I'm guessing from this he's not a fan of Pope Francis.
As I said before. Well, again, remember he was a Jesuit initially. I'm going to talk about the Jesuits in a little while. But the Jesuits were very strong. We'll see. We'll talk about them. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line of all of this is that this woman, Marozia, and her younger sister, Theodora, they ruled Rome through the popes. Finally, there was a strong political figure, the Holy Roman Emperor. I'm not going to explain what that was. That will take 10 minutes. The Holy Roman Emperor, Henry III.
I got time.
All right, okay. Charlemagne was declared Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800. All right, he was crowned, I think, by
the king, right? Wasn't he the king?
He's the king. Yeah, he was a king. At that time, he ruled much of France, much of Germany, and northern Italy. And he was crowned on December 25th by the Pope. And that's a title that was passed down first through his son and his family, and then to others. And there was a commission or a committee that elected what's called the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, J. Burry, who was an historian who wrote at the end of the 1800s, commented that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, which was quite accurate for most of the time, because the Holy Roman Empire, they certainly was very political. It wasn't Roman. Most of them were German. Ultimately, the Holy Roman Empire settles on the Habsburg dynasty, which was a German dynasty, Austria, the Austrian Empire. And at much of the time, it wasn't an empire. But in any event, this Henry III, it's fascinating because Henry III wants to restore the Pope. So he comes down with an army.
The Holy Roman Emperor was supposed to be replacing the role of the Pope, or he was
no. He's going to choose a Pope. No,
he chooses the next Pope.
He wants to choose the Pope. He's going to choose the Pope.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. And his son is going to defy the Pope. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. All right. Anyway, so he comes down and he calls a synod. That synod, again, meeting of the bishops of Sutri, S-U-T-R-I, Sutri. And there they have a major, shall we say, flip-flop, because there were 3 people who came to be Pope, and he deposes all of them. And they choose another man who is a religious guy, and takes the name of Benedict IX. The bottom line is that Benedict finally, he surrenders ultimately his title, and they choose a new pope who is a German bishop, and he takes the title of Clement II. And he's not too important, but what's important is the fellow comes after him. That fellow was Pope Leo IX. Now, Leo IX is also German, but he really wanted to assert the power of the papacy. Now, let me explain a little bit about this. Those of you who know something of the Middle East or of Russia, you'll know that in Russia, there's a Russian Orthodox patriarch. You also may know that there in the Middle East, there's a patriarch in Jerusalem. If you're Christian, you've gone there, you probably have heard about the patriarch of Jerusalem. There's also, there is a patriarch in Alexandria, in Egypt. And
what is a patriarch in this
patriarch
context?
is,
I mean, I know what patriarch is reference to, like the first father,
right, that's exactly what it means.
So
they're
designated
a patriarch in the Eastern churches, in the eyes of the people in the Eastern church, is equivalent to the Pope. So you had a patriarch, originally in Antioch, one in Jerusalem, and one in Alexandria, not Cairo, Alexandria. And they were the heads of different churches in those areas. Then there's a pope. Then there is the patriarch in Rome. This is the Pope, the patriarch in Rome. In the 10th century, now there is a dispute because the Pope, which is Leo IX, he wants to assert authority over the patriarch in Constantinople. And this is going to lead to what's called a schism, a break. Now,
I thought it's a schism.
Well, it's pronounced schism, usually, not schism.
Really?
I believe that's the way Baldwin said it.
Okay.
All right. But they do say schismatic. So, yeah. All right.
I always
schismatic church. It's not the schismatic church.
I have a couple of rants I just want to get to real quick here. So let me just pull them up. Breck Nichols saying, great logic returns, proof that dreams come true. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Snuggle Struggle says, off topic but alarming, the Advanced Research and Invention Agency will be greenlit to begin blotting out the sun. But I thought injecting aerosols into the atmosphere was conspiracy theory. Before I actually brought my father on here, this is like the one topic that I was thinking about covering tonight. Maybe we'll cover it tomorrow. Also about blotting out the sun, the entire world has spent countless trillions on green energy only to now stifle this iffy source of energy creation. The hypocrisy is palpable. It is. It's astonishing how I mean, the idea, did you hear about this, that they're thinking about blotting out the sun now in England, in the UK? Because they're going to be doing things with the clouds to make clouds brighter.
That's crazy.
If
you blot out the sun, you don't have the sun, everything here will die. Everyone will die if there's no sun.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We'll freeze to death.
Yeah.
We'll all freeze to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
it's insanity. That's
crazy.
I'll probably end up talking about it tomorrow. But.
All right. Anyway, no, but everyone will die. If God forbid that happens. Okay. Anyway.
You were talking about the
right. Okay. So Leo IX sends a cardinal who has a very short fuse. All right, to Constantinople. His name was Humbert, Humbert. This Humbert goes there, and he gets into a fight with the patriarch there, a man by the name of Michael Kirolaris. And these two guys each excommunicate the other. So Kirolaris excommunicates Humbert, and Humbert excommunicates him. Now, excommunication means that a person is no longer a proper Christian, and he's not allowed to partake of the sacraments of the church. That's what it means, that term, technically. All right. So now, basically, that leads to, in 1054, leads to this mutual excommunication, and the church is split. And then now some people say, well, they're heretics, not heretics. Technically, they're not heretics. It's a schismatic church. It's a broken church. And each one doesn't recognize the other. And it was actually only about 50 years ago that they reconciled this. Up until then, they were separate churches. All right, now, some people argue that the validity of this excommunication from the Western side was not really in effect. Why? Because Pope Leo IX died before the excommunication happened. And Humbert's authority comes from the Pope, and the Pope is dead, so that ends it. But the West, during the Crusades, the Westerners, meaning the Roman Catholics, who come in, they don't know anything about that, and they basically often curse the Greeks and the Greek Church. And in fact, Richard Lionheart in the Third Crusade, he made a castle which he called Mata Griffon, which in medieval French means curses on the Greeks. So that was, and in 1250, 1204, it ends in 1250. In 1204, the Fourth Crusade was diverted and attacked Constantinople, and they actually established a Latin church in Constantinople until they get thrown out in 1250. Now, another very important pope in the 11th century, very important, it's easy to remember this pope. This pope is Nicholas II. And Nicholas II makes an edict. He makes two edicts, which ultimately are going to have big long-term effect. One is, he says that churchmen cannot marry. Now, in the Eastern Church, the lower churchmen, meaning not the bishops, are allowed to marry. But in the Western churches, no. Men that were married, their wives died, they're allowed to remarry. They're allowed to become priests. But from what I know and what I understand, and if somebody knows better, they can correct me on this. Even today, a married person cannot assume the priesthood in the Roman Church. That was one big thing. The other big thing he did is even bigger. The other thing he did was, I had mentioned a few of these incidents that had happened in Rome 150 years earlier, before 1056, about when this happened. So what occurs is, this Nicholas decides that we have to have really, how do we choose the Pope? The Pope has a number of titles, and that could reflect on him. He's known as the Bishop of Rome. He's known as the Holy See, S-E-E, like a bishop rules a see, S-E-E. And the Vicar of Christ, and the Holy Father. He has a number of titles. and I do reflect that in things in the eyes of the church are different responsibilities and powers he has. So Nicholas decides that in order to make sure that there are no what he called anti-popes, those are people that claim to be popes, but are not recognized, and there will be a number of anti-popes after this anyway, in order to make sure that the popes are selected properly, he appoints people who are assigned to churches in Rome and in the surrounding area as priests in special churches, and also bishops in certain areas, certain dioceses. Milan is one. And those people, he brings them in to Rome, and they set up the election procedure. This reform basically is a declaration of independence from the church, from the politics, and the popes are now going to be selected by people who were assigned as cardinal priests or cardinal deacons or bishops. There's only 2 or 3 of those, the latter group. So all of these cardinals who are now going to Rome were assigned by either the Pope Francis or Pope Benedict, the earlier popes. They were named as cardinals, and that is why they have the right to choose the next pope. There's a 2/3 vote as to who's going to be the pope. They have to get 2/3 vote of the assemblage, and what they do is they have the ballots. They each cast the ballot. I think they bring them to the sacristy, which is in the church, and then they count them. And if they don't, no one has 2/3. They burn them, wet them down, and burn them wet, so there's black smoke. And when they choose somebody,
so
they ask him, "Do you accept?" And he goes, "Accepto," and it's all in Latin. I accept. And then they take the ballots and burn them dry. So you get white smoke, and they announce, "Habemus Papam," we have a pope. That's how.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know about the white smoke when they get a new pope. I have a couple of questions about the selection process. Are you familiar with modern day selection processes?
It's about the same as what I've said.
Okay, fine. Let me get to a couple of chats because I have a couple of questions about the politics involved with the selection of.
That's a whole thing. Yeah.
I'm very curious. Like, if there's a short list of, but we'll get to that in just a moment. First, let me get this up. Adrian said, "I was taught the Jesuits were started to be defenders of the Pope, and in their ordination vow never to accept the position of Pope. But that was then. Now is different. I never trust Jesuits."
We're going to talk about them later. They are known as the soldiers of Christ. That's what they call themselves. Jesuit means that.
Mm-hmm. Wellesley says true priests can't get married, but if a minister converts and is married, he can be a married priest.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Ozelian, though, he's the one who asked earlier about that topic that you were unfamiliar with. I think from I think it was from Revelation. So he says here, Dr. Mr. Neighbor, it's called the Prophecy of Saint Malachi. In it, the last pope listed as Peter the Roman. 3 of the potential popes. I've
never read the New Testament. I can't comment on this. I don't know this.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know anything about this.
All right.
Well, Peter comes because the first pope, Petrus means rock in Greek.
Uh-huh.
That's where it comes. And Peter was the first pope. That's where the name Peter comes from. Because Petrus is Greek for rock. R-O-C-K.
I remember, like, when I was a kid, I learned so many things about Christianity from you, or things that we have today that most people I know never heard of. Like, I remember you explaining the origin of the term, of the phrase iota of a difference.
Well, that actually, I was told by my friend Professor David Berger, comes from Greek mythology, but to me it made very big sense. And okay, I'll explain why I think it meant that came from there. It certainly was re-edified from this.
I thought it was very very cool.
It is cool. Well, it's cool because you have this Arius. All right, now Arius said it in Greek. And by the way, I really don't know a lot of Greek. I only know the Greek that I needed to learn. But anyway.
How embarrassing for you.
Yeah, well, it is sometimes. I was told I should learn Greek. One professor said learn Russian, another said learn Greek. I'm not making this up. I was told specifically to learn these languages.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I figured Arabic was enough, Anyway, so all right. So the bottom line is that in Greek, homoousion, homo is man, ousion is like being a part of, in, you could say. All right. And that would be, if you're going to say that Jesus was human, you would say homoousion. If you want to say like human, then it's iota. In Greek, the I is an iota. So the iota of a difference between liking the humanity or actually being human, that is a big deal to those people that said that he's human, and today, of course, the official doctrine is he was not exactly human.
And an iota is a dot, right? The Greek letter iota is just a dot.
It's an I. The letter I.
Right. So
right? It's just
so the
an
point
I
is,
in the middle of the word homoousion, homoousion.
When people say it doesn't make an iota of a difference contextually made all the difference in the world, because depending on whether you came from a sect that believed that Jesus was actually a man or just like a man, that was the iota of a difference. So people, but the iota is a pretty small letter, which is why it's pretty ironic. It's a term of irony, really, that an iota of a difference is actually something that's very significant with respect to your religious ideology, but the letter itself is minuscule. So that's what I always thought was like very ironic. I remember learning that from you, like when I was like 10 years old.
All right, whatever. Okay. Anyway, so now remember, we said that synod of Sutri, the meeting at Sutri. After that, the number of the popes that become men who become pope are monks. They tend to be the real thing. They're not politicians. They're the real thing. One of the most famous, if not the most famous of them, was a man by the name of Gregory the Seventh. Took the name Gregory, was the seventh one. Took the name Gregory because Gregory the First was very important in converting large areas of Europe. So he took that name too, Gregory. His real name was Hildebrand, Hildebrand. All right. So it's Hildebrand. He's a pope from 1073 to 85. And he is a reformer. And he wants to assert the authority of the church over a lot of things. And he gets into a big fight with the Holy Roman Emperor, the son of Henry III, Henry IV. And let me explain what this fight is all about, because this fight is also about politics and political power. In this time frame, Europe, Western Europe, is in what is known as the Middle Ages. That's a term that was given out in the 1900s, 1800s, 19th century, late 19th century. During this period, political power rested primarily with people who controlled land. And a bishop controlled what's known as a benefice, or beneficium in Latin. A benefice had peasants working it and produced revenue. And the bishop who has it is well off and hires knights to fight. He has political authority. So Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor, wants the right to appoint the bishops because he wants to have bishops that are loyal to him for political reasons. Gregory says, no, I am the Pope. I should appoint bishops. Now we know today the Pope appoints bishops, but the bishops today have very little political power normally in normal situations. So there's this becomes known as what is the investiture controversy, because investiture means the creating of a bishop. You invest the bishop with his crozier, his cross, like a staff or a shepherd, and his mitre, and the authority, and the land, and the power. So Henry gets into a big fight with Gregory, and Gregory does something which is, at that point, the atomic bomb of the church. And that is, he declares the interdict on all territory controlled by Henry IV. So what does that mean, the interdict? All right. The interdict means that any area controlled by whoever's under the interdict, no masses, no baptisms, no last rites, no legal marriages, no rights of the church, period.
Why did he? Where did he impose that, and why?
On the territories controlled by Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV. It's mostly Germany and some parts of what today would be Czech Republic, and mostly there in northern Italy.
Okay.
All right. Now, Henry has to get this off because this has tremendous political ramifications. People can revolt against him, and it's kosher, it's acceptable, it's wonderful for them to do it because they're following what the Pope has said. So it's a big deal. I know it's a big deal. A big deal.
He was inspiring a revolution, essentially.
Basically, a revolt. Let's say a revolt. Revolution is too strong. Revolt.
Okay.
So what happens?
This was Gregory. This is Pope Gregory.
Gregory's doing this.
Okay.
So what's going to happen now? Henry IV is going to pull a massive shtick. He's going to go to the Pope publicly and beg forgiveness for having sinned. Now, the Pope has to forgive him. This is the cool thing here, because the Pope is the Holy Father. He's got, if someone does penance, you got to, and you'll have the tshuva, you know, he's got to be forgiven. Once he's forgiven, then off comes the interdict, and he can go back doing what he wants. You follow this?
Yeah. So he basically was trying to force Pope.
Right, he's going to write. So now Gregory knows he's coming. So Gregory flees Rome. And and he goes to Canossa as a monastery, Canossa.
These are the kind of stories I wanted. This is what I was looking for from you, Ted. I need more stories like this. I want to hear. These are the kind of stories. I don't need the history. I want stories like this. Go on. Yeah. So Pope Gregory flees. So he flees Rome so that he doesn't have to give.
Doesn't have to grant penance.
Absolution.
Doesn't have to grant absolution.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. So. And Henry follows him, and there's a oil painting, supposedly, of what happened. And he goes and he bows before him in the snow, and bang, he gets forgiven, and then he goes back again to do this again. So he wins, basically, because Henry wins. Later, in 1122, there's a diet or a meeting, another word for a meeting of bishops and non-bishops, and they make a settlement, and the argument is this, the settlement is this, that
what's the difference between a diet and a synod?
Synod is a meeting of bishops. Diet is a meeting of bishops and important lay people.
Oh, so it's a broader
It's a
thing.
broader thing, yeah.
Okay.
In 1122, the Diet of Worms.
That's when you have bishops and Elon Musk also. Like that's a diet. Mm-hmm. But in modern terminology, it's like we're bringing a few billionaires also.
So anyway, so there at the Diet of Worms, so there's another pope by now. 3-4 popes later, they work out a compromise. The compromise is that it's really not a compromise. It really is kneeling to the secular authority. And some people have pointed out, well, you still have another century of strong popes, and then the secular authority begins more and more. What happens is basically that the Pope gets the right to consecrate the bishops, but the Holy Roman Emperor gets the right to choose them. which is all he really wants. He doesn't care who comes.
This is sort of just by comparison. This is sort of like the president nominating someone for position, then the Senate ends up confirming them. Is that what it is?
You could say that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Especially when you have a Republican president, Republican Senate, or a Democratic and Democrat Senate.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So now, all right. Let me go on. I'm going to skip forward. The last of the very strong popes.
Someone's got a question for you.
Yeah,
asking,
what?
Is the only surviving institution from Rome that survived the Roman Catholic Church?
The only institution
that survived from Rome. It's hard for me to think of anything
else. That's an
else.
interesting question. I've never considered that. Honestly, I never thought about it.
I sort of question the term the Roman Church, because I want to ask you this: a
Roman Church is not really a Roman Church; it's a Catholic Church.
Right. That's what I was going to say. While it's situated in Italy, which was formerly Rome, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, from what I understand, the great Caesars who we associate with Rome historically, like they were all polytheists and believed in Roman gods. And
until Constantine. I didn't get into that at all. That's a whole other story.
Well,
you want a story? That's a great story. Constantine's mother. Constantine, there are two emperors, an Eastern and Western emperor at this period.
When is this?
And around 313, Maxentius is the one, I think he's in the West and Constantine's in the East. And Constantine's mama is a Christian. And supposedly, he sees the sun. The sun can go a certain. He knows this. Stephen Ghazni knows this, right? He sees the sun. Now the sun sometimes does something. It's called a dog star, DOGSTAR, and it has certain. It looks a little weird, sort of like a cross. So Constantine sees this, and he has a dream, supposedly, and then he sees this, and he puts on the shields. They put the first two letters, Christos in Greek means Messiah. That's the word Christ is the anglicized version of this. And it looks like XP. If you've seen the Standard of Columbia, it's an X. In the middle of it, it looks like a P. X, for all of us who know a little math, is Chi. And the P in Greek and in Russian is an R. So XP is Cairo, sounding like the city of Cairo and have nothing to do with it. And it's pronounced Christos. So supposedly they put this on their banners, and Constantine wins. And Maxentius is killed. And the bottom line is this: now the Roman Empire officially becomes Christian. Until this period, it was not officially Christian. There is an attempt to undo it. Another cool story, very interesting story. You like stories. There's the Christians in the church taught that the Jews' temple was destroyed. Our temple was destroyed. They say because we did not accept their Messiah.
Right.
They say that. And what happened was that there was one Roman emperor. After Constantine, there's Constantius, and then finally, I think it's Constantine III. I'm not sure. I'd have to think for a minute. But anyway, from 361 to 363, the next in line to be emperor is a man by the name of Julian, or Julianus, Julian in English. Mm-hmm. He will be given the name of Julian the Apostate by the Christians. What happened supposedly is the following. Julian becomes emperor. Julian decides that he wants to zap the Christians. The Christians already have Christian schools and bishops, and he starts persecuting them. And he puts all sorts of pressure on them. Now, the big rival between Rome, whose symbol was the eagle, in the east is Persia. Symbol of Persia is the bear.
Really? Even at this late period, I thought Persia was ancient history. I mean, I thought they reached their zenith like 700 years earlier.
No. This is the ancient Achaemenian dynasty.
Yeah, I'm thinking Xerxes. I think Xerxes is like 400.
Parthians, and now, oh gosh, I'm in mental block. I'll think of it in 2 minutes. There is a dynasty that rules from 221 until 656. That dynasty is a real Persian dynasty, and they're constantly at war with the Romans. In fact, one of the reasons for the Islamic conquest being so easy was the Romans and they wore each other down, and then out from the desert come the Muslims and bang. But in any event, the Sasanian Persians, that's the name of the dynasty, the Banu Sasan or Sasanian Persians. Anyway, so the Sasanian Persians are the enemy. So Julian goes with the Roman army. He stops in Jerusalem and he tells the Jews, build the temple up, rebuild the Jewish temple. Now, a number of the Christians are very upset. For example, the mama of Constantine, who was a very devout Christian and very anti-Jewish, had come there, and also she tried to do all sorts of things to the Jews when she was there. And now Julian reverses these, and he tells the Jews, start to build the temple. And then he moves eastward to fight the Persians. In one of the early battles, he is killed. He is shot in the collarbone with an arrow. The arrow has Persian markings, but the arrow comes from the direction of a Christian contingent in his own army.
From behind, basically.
Right, yeah. The Jews, meanwhile, started to rebuild the temple. And during a huge lightning storm, what they had done, there's a fire, which the Jews say that the Christians set. And supposedly, the Christians say there was a miracle, because when the fire went out, they found a scroll of the book of Matthew, which is the first book in the Christian New Testament, in the ruins there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Wait just a second. I thought Peter was was the first one with scrolls of New Testament. You're telling me it was much later? It was
No. I'm not saying this is the first one. I'm saying it's a copy.
Oh, it's another book. You're saying it's another
of Matthew. Yeah.
Oh, it's just a copy. It's just a copy.
Right. But the Christians claim
it's not like an original. It's not an original.
No. Everything was a scroll in those days. You know that,
right? No, I understand. I'm just saying. No, I'm saying like the same way Adam Smith. That Mormons believe Adam Smith found some New Testamentary. I was wondering if you're saying it's not a New Testamentary that had never been.
No, it's a scroll of the book of Matthew. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I'm not familiar enough with this material to tell you if it was word for word what their official version is. This is a whole other thing.
Right.
All right. Anyway,
not the King James version, you're saying.
Right. Well, the King James version was around 1610.
Right,
all right.
So
anyway,
unlikely to be the King James version.
What? No, not at all. No.
Right.
Well, it's in English, the King James version.
I know. Yeah. I was making a little.
I assumed this was in Greek, but I don't know. I've never seen anything explaining that. Okay,
so they find this scroll there after this fire.
Right, and the Christians claim that the fire came from heaven, and that's a sign you're not to rebuild. And the Jews say, we will rebuild. And when the emperor comes back, he'll tell us to rebuild. But of course, the emperor never comes back because the emperor is killed. All right, and the next emperor is very Christian, and he undoes all the reforms, anti-Christian reforms of Julian. And that's the end of that.
Interesting.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Anyway, so next. Okay.
Jeremiah Johnson says, yes, the church is what remains of Roman Empire. That's why the Pope's title is Pontifex Maximus.
Right. That is true. That was the chief priest of the Roman religion was the Pontifex Maximus. That is correct.
All right.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, in any event, we're going to talk about now what happens.
I asked you a question about
what was the question?
The selection of new popes. I asked you this before, and we sort of veered away from it. I was curious like how someone would get on the short list of people, because you say you have to get 2/3 vote.
Well,
I'm wondering how does
what I know of this,
okay,
from what I know about this, is that there are people that campaign for this.
So it's like
there are people that campaign. Now, in many ways, Francis was relatively liberal. Like, for example, he said accepted the gay people in the church. All right, he accepted the gays in the church. That's one example. So now the question is, what will the next pope do? So do they want someone who is liberal, or they want someone who is more conservative?
Right.
1 second, please. Diane, milk. Thank you. Milk. Yeah, glass of milk. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Okay. All right. Now, so I mean that's the question, whom they want.
You want more?
Milk. Just milk. All right. In other words, the bottom line is if they want the church to be more conservative, what's so funny?
Nothing, Ted. Nothing.
If they want the church to be more conservative, so in other words, to back away. If they want it to be more to back away from what he was doing, so then they'll choose someone who's more conservative. Otherwise, they'll choose someone who's more liberal. There's one fellow I read recently on something, I don't remember where I saw it. They're saying that he is because he's like the number 2 to the assistant to the Pope, and he also he is also very pro-Palestinian, and the Pope became very pro-Palestinian in his later years. To get into that,
I hope his replacement is someone who's very strong in supporting the nuclear family. That would
I hope so. Yeah,
that would be something that would be really healthy.
That would be useful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
And who knows? Who knows? Maybe the return of populism and the popularity of Trump may have an influence on that ultimately, because we see it having a rippling effect in Europe in general. That there's more of a return towards populism and things of that nature. Do you suspect that perhaps that may end up playing a role in how the church ends up selecting the next pope, or you think that that's not going to happen, that they don't really care about the common culture in that sense? This is an opinion thing. This is not like, I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on that.
That is not the chief requirement for someone. His attitude towards Palestinians, for sure, that is not the main thing.
No, well, I was asking, like, do they try to have a finger on the pulse of what common culture is? Because I would think that the selection of Pope Francis perhaps was motivated by trying to find someone whose finger is on the pulse, and if they had their finger on the pulse of common culture today, because in the wake of the election of Donald Trump, we see throughout Europe that there is more of a trending toward populism, conservative values, and things of that nature. And I'm wondering if you think that may
I have no idea.
Into the
I know nothing about this. I really don't know anything about the internal politics of the church.
Okay. All right. Because people seem to think they know who's on the short list, and I'm wondering how anyone knows who's on the short list.
I don't know. I saw a couple of names, but I don't know who they are. So
they were saying that we may have an American finally become. Has an American ever become pope before?
No. Mm-hmm. This pope was the only Western Hemisphere pope ever.
Really?
Someone said they might choose an African pope.
And Belle Feinstein says, my husband Menachem is amused and fascinated by the conversation between you and Great Logic. Thank you. Francis was a liberation theology theologian. In South America, it was common. Okay. And Trumpinator says, do you know that Francis appointed 80+% of the bishops that will pick the next pope? Really? I did not know that. That's not a good sign.
Well, that means it's likely that there's going to be a liberal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That doesn't sound like a very good sign at all.
But I can't worry about this. I mean, this is not my problem or issue. I have enough other issues to worry about. I mean, I just hope they choose someone who is, going to be open-minded towards us. That's all. That's the only thing I care about on this, really. Yeah. All right, now let's move a little forward. I mentioned the Great Schism. That was a schism of 1054. There is another schism
In this context, is that there's a split, is what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there's a schism. That's very interesting. This is a very, very interesting thing. All right, and I'm going to tell you about this. I think it's really a fascinating.
Oh, Jacob. By the way, Jacob Castro is pointing out correctly that bishops don't pick the Pope; cardinals do. So if you only appointed bishops,
right? But all cardinals are bishops.
Right, but the point is that if you're only bishop level is below cardinal, right?
That's true. That's
so
true.
If only cardinals have a vote, in that case, him appointing 80% as far as being bishops doesn't mean he'll necessarily have that those bishops will be in a position to have a vote on the next pope. So that's the point that Jacob was making there.
That is correct. He's right.
All right, go on.
Now, there's a very interesting development happens. I actually, when I teaching this period in college, I spend quite a bit of time on it. We'll only spend a few minutes on it.
So by the way, one more thing is that Wellesley saying John Paul II and Francis were not on the short list. I guess they were dark horses to get in, but I don't know. You said
right. I know that. I knew they were not on the short list.
Okay. All right, go on.
That I knew actually. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. There was a cardinal named Boniface VIII. Now, Boniface VIII he replaces another pope, Celestine V. Now, Celestine V was a frumy guy, a religious guy. He was he was a monk,
okay,
a hermit, and he lived in a mountain.
I don't know what a monk is in the context of cardinal, bishop, monk. I don't know what that means.
All right, no, all right.
Now I know.
A monk also takes not only he takes vows. They all take vows of chastity and obedience
and celibacy, right?
Celibacy, yeah. But a monk also takes poverty.
Really?
Monks, I believe, yes.
Okay.
This brother Peter is a hermit, and they're trying to choose someone. It's around, I think it was around 1293. And they finally, in 1295 and 1293, they choose this fellow. What's this? We're talking about a different topic. What is she saying?
She was just saying that she wants to cover other topics as well. So not just like papacy. But
well,
I didn't mean to distract you. I'm sorry.
All right. What happens here is they choose this monk. Now, the man who wanted the job was a Roman politician. This Roman politician installs a speaking trumpet, in the room where this Pope, the Celestine V, who again is he's a monk. He's a superstitious monk. And what he does is he whispers into his ear through the speaking trumpet at night when he's asleep. You know you should not be Pope. You know you are not pure enough to be Pope.
Who did this?
This is the guy who wants to be Pope.
Well, do you know his name?
All right. Yes. Yeah. All right.
What's his name?
His name is Benedetto Caetani. All right.
How is he?
All right.
Okay.
You asked. All right.
No, I'm not laughing about the name. I'm laughing about conceptually. I'm just picturing it. I think that's hilarious. Go on.
Wait, it's very interesting what's going to happen to him. You'll see. So he convinces this Peter, who is Celestine V, to abdicate. All right. Mm-hmm. And he ends up locking him up, and the guy dies. And he takes over. But he himself, and he gets cursed. He says, you end up dying like a dog, and that's going to happen to him, actually. He gets what he deserves. But the reason we're mentioning him is this, that he gets into a fight with a very strong ruler who, by the way, was very bad to the Jews, this strong ruler. This ruler, in French history, they come down rah-rah because he's strong, but his name was Philip IV, or Philip the Fair, he's called. And Philip IV ends up invading, and this guy is knocked out, basically. And the cardinals choose a Frenchman, and the Frenchman moves to southern France. So now the papacy, for the next 70 years, and then again there'll be a split for another 40 years, the papacy is going to be centered in Avignon, southern France, Avignon. And I have shown films to students on the palace there. It's very beautiful. It's a tourist center. If you're in southern France, you want to see it, any of you guys, it's supposed to be very beautiful. I've never been there, but it's supposed to be a real tourist site. And that was the papal center of the papacy.
What period was this?
What? This is from 1307 until 1378. All right. And
are you going to tell us the story how that guy ends up dying like a dog, or are you going to leave us all hanging on that?
Well, that's it. He was captured and he died like a dog, fleeing. That's what happened.
He was captured by.
That was this Caetani, who is known as Boniface VIII. That's the papal type.
Okay.
Now, there will be popes ruling the Christian world from Avignon in southern France for 70 years. And in fact, it's likened to our captivity in Babylonia, which is 70 years. And this is nicknamed the Babylonian captivity of the papacy. It's nicknamed that. The historians call it that too. It's not just the Jews call it. The historians, Babylonian captivity of the papacy. Now,
the Babylonian
captivity of the papacy, even though it's in France, it's not anything to do with Babylonia, really. So now listen to what happens.
So you're saying, okay.
One of the popes.
Just to clarify for my audience here, we historically, when Jews were thrown out of Israel when the first temple was destroyed, so there was a mass migration to the country of Babylonia, and in fact, we refer to the Talmud that was created there as Talmud Bavli, coming from the word like the Talmud that came out of Babylon, as opposed to a different Talmud that came out. It's called Talmud Yerushalmi, which is a reference to Talmud, a different Talmud that came out in Jerusalem, which is similar but has some significant variations. So that's why when you're saying that. So, but the term in Babylon is almost like a term of being in exile. Like it's not
right.
It's natural.
That's
homeland,
what people said it was.
Which is why it's interesting that when the papacy moves to France, you're saying that it's in Babylon. It's in Babylon captivity, because that, I guess, the term Babylon almost becomes a reference to being in exile in general.
Right, and people said they looked at it that way. Now,
and before you get to that, let me just pull this up real quick. From Mr. K in the chat, good logic. Pope Francis nominated 80% of the cardinals, not just bishops. It was cardinals who are eligible to vote for the new pope. As of April 21st, 2025, there are 135 cardinal electors under 80 years old, and 108 of them were, I guess, nominated by Pope Francis. So I guess maybe he will have a significant influence in the selection next pope. How many times today did you think about Rome today? That would be great with Sargon joining in. This would be great with Sargon. I haven't thought about Rome very often today.
Although, I did. I thought about it today several times. Anyway.
Why?
I don't know. It popped up. It was funny. I was listening to Fox, and they didn't say anything about Rome, and I'm saying, huh? Well, the funeral is on Saturday, is the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway.
Right, so he's lying in state for 3 days now.
Yeah, well, yeah, until Shabbos, yeah. In the morning. Over there, it's going to be in the afternoon. All right, anyway, 6 hours later there than here. All right, anyway, so, all right. So now, in 1378, one of the popes is going to come back to Rome in 1378. I believe that pope. I don't have the name here. I forget the name. I'm not sure.
What year are we talking?
Gregory the 11th. It's Gregory the 11th. Okay. He returns to Rome.
What year are we talking about now?
And that's in 1378.
Okay.
Now, and he dies.
I thought it was Gregory the 9th in 1378.
No, it's Gregory the 11th. Yeah.
I
know you when you're pulling my leg. All right. So listen to what happens here now.
It's an easy mistake to make. You put the I in front of the X instead of after the X. It's an easy mistake to make.
Okay, listen to what happens. There's a big fight among the cardinals because there are Roman cardinals there, and the populace in Rome wants them to choose an Italian so they'll stay in Rome. And the French cardinals, who are majority, want to choose a Frenchman and go back to Avignon. And ultimately, the locals decide to force an election by dumping in, they cut off the food, and then they dump in all sorts of other unpleasant things, which we don't need to mention, that come from human beings. They dump it through holes in the roof. And finally, under duress, the French cardinals elect an Italian. All right. Now, okay, this guy is Urban VI. The French cardinals are furious, though, because they felt they were forced, and they run back to France, and they elect another pope, a French pope. So now you have what is also known as the Western Schism or Great Papal Schism. And that's going to go from 1378 until really 1418. So 40 years now of a schism, a break. There's a different schism than the one in 1054. This one goes for 40 years. Ultimately, it's going to be settled by the Council of Constance, and they will depose the French Pope and the Italian Pope at that point, and another fellow who's elected, and choose a fourth fellow as the Pope, and that ends the schism. One of the things that people say, though, historians say, is that this kind of stuff paves the way for the Protestant Reformation or Protestant Revolt, because people are very disillusioned with the church because of this. When there were two different popes, you had some nations recognizing the Pope in France, like the Scotch recognized the Pope in France, the English recognized the Pope in Italy. The Scotch were trying to show they're independent. There was a whole tumult of independence for Scotland and England in this period. I know a lot of political things go into who is selected. So that's what happens. That's called the Babylonian captivity in Avignon, and also the Great Schism. Now, I'm not going to get into, I don't want to get into the whole Reformation here. It's way too much. I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do.
That's like the one part. That's the one part I know anything about historically.
Yeah, well, I know. I don't
have
really
a vague recollection.
I can do this. I mean, but I have material here. But
that's okay. That's okay. I assume most of my audience knows that.
All right, and that's the audience wants it.
The only thing I remember there, you had me watch a movie which I think called Thomas Becket, which featured Richard.
Oh, that's a different thing. That was earlier. That's in the 12th century.
Right.
It's Henry II and Thomas Becket. Right.
And it really, and it's interesting to see the mix of the papacy with and the way the politics go.
Canterbury, not the Pope.
I'm sorry?
Becket is the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, he's
the
not.
Pope.
No, but
It's in England.
I remember from the little I recall of that movie, which now we're talking at probably 35 years. I'm going back as far as remembering like scenes from that movie. I remember that there was a lot of politics in between the church and the nobility as far as them choosing people who they felt would be sympathetic to the needs of the throne and the influence that they would wield with the church. So I'm wondering, how long did that sort of go on? That the church was in a position that it sort of had to massage the politics around the throne.
1300s is the beginning of the real decline of the church generally. Now in England, the whole Reformation. I always, when I teach the Reformation in England, I say there would have been no Reformation in England if they'd had amniocentesis. I say that because the reason there was a revolution or a Reformation in England was because Henry VIII, his father had seized the throne, Henry VII, and and there was a whole civil war before that. Oh, because there was no male heir. And Henry wants a male heir. He desperately wants a male heir. That's what he wants.
But you never got.
Yeah. And if he'd known that Elizabeth was a girl, I mean, I think he would have not married her. Maybe she wouldn't have been killed. Because what happened was after she was born, Anne Boleyn got pregnant again, and she had a baby boy who was stillborn. Now, I once read a book, maybe 30 years ago, about a guy who claimed that Henry had syphilis, and that's why Elizabeth could never have children, and that's why Mary didn't have one child that survived, and that's why Edward VI was the son of that he did have, or lived, Jane Seymour's child, died in his teen years because they were sick with syphilis. That's what he claimed. That's what that book claimed. He also claimed a number of other important people in that period had syphilis. And we do know that was the period, the 1400s, when syphilis hit Europe, late 1400s. I want to talk a little bit about the Jesuits.
Before you do, Allegan News says, Joe, this would be a great thing to look back at with your grandkids in 20 years so they can learn history, make connections with great-grandfather. They'll make connections with him directly, God willing. So, there you go. Oh, and the Vigano, HPGKMC says in Rumble, Vigano was a threat as a likely successor, so the corrupt deep Vatican ensured he would be excommunicated and therefore no longer a threat. Vatican III coming soon. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm not what he's talking about. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Ignatius the lawyer, he was a military man. A shell went off near him or something, and he survived. So he decides to become a soldier of God. As spiritual exercises was book, they're designed to strengthen the will to follow the will of God. And this is what he writes. And Lahavdil, I saw something written by a rabbi, almost word for word this. Not quite. That we may be altogether in the same mind and in conformity with the church herself, as she have defined anything, listen to this now, as she, meaning the church, shall have defined anything to be black, which in our eyes appears to be white, we ought to in like manner pronounce it to be black. For we must undoubtedly believe that the Spirit of our Lord and the Spirit of the Orthodox Church, his spouse, by which we are governed and directed to salvation, is the same. All right.
In other words, whatever the church says goes.
Right, 100%. And the Society of JSUS, the Jesuits, all right, pledge absolute obedience to the Pope, belief in a hierarchical society, education to achieve goals, and dedication to conflict. And it's military, the three major activities. All right, education to stop Protestantism using humanist methods, and they're successful. They bring Poland back to the Roman Church. Poland had become Protestant, and it becomes Catholic, which it is today. All right, missionary activity in non-Christians. So Francis Xavier in India and Japan.
By the way, the term Catholic, not to get you off point here, the term Catholic originates only after the Reformation, right? I mean, before that, it's just Christian, and then once there's a split, then they identify. I always assume they identified the split between Protestants and
no. The word Protestant comes The word Protestant comes. It was a meeting, a diet at Speyer, where they protested a Catholic diet and what they said, and they're protesting against it, and that's where the word Protestant comes from. The Catholic means universal church. The word Catholic means universal. With a small t, C.
So Christians when Christians they went by the term Catholic to show they were all universal.
They were Catholics. Yeah, they were the Catholic Church. I believe so. Yes.
I'm saying if you go back to the 800s, they still would refer themselves as Catholics.
I believe so, but I'm not sure. Sure.
Okay.
All right. But the Catholic Church considers itself to be the universal. Always did. And there was no thought of a Protestant church at that point.
Mm-hmm. Snuggle Struggle here says in Rumble, 2016 shook the establishment to its very core. I think they adopted the paradox of tolerance in response, dedicating their intent to put Scientology to shame. Watch as the church consumes the DNC. I'm not sure what
he means by that.
But maybe he's talking about some of the scandals.
National Convention.
The what?
I don't know what he means by that.
Yeah, I could be. I think he might be referring to when he says 2016. Maybe he's talking about some of the scandals that the church faced.
I don't know. The one son, right? That's correct. One son that lived, Jane Seymour, the older sister of Anne Boleyn, had a child that was a male, but he was illegitimate.
Well, we're talking 2016.
No, Left Coaster. This is Left Coaster.
Dead. Oh, you're looking at the chat. Oh, you're looking at the other chat.
I'm looking at the other chat. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. I was getting confused because we're talking 2016. Sorry.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, you were talking 2016, and then you brought up, Anne Boleyn. So you were looking at looking at the YouTube chat. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pull your side.
All right. No. So I was just saying that Henry had a son, the Duke of Richmond, by Anne Boleyn's sister. Earlier on, I think that whatever, if that's true that he had syphilis, that early on that hadn't affected so much. I don't know how long the Duke of Richmond lived. This I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I could look it up somewhere, but it's not, frankly, of major importance.
Okay.
In any event, so the Catholics had a thing called the Council of Trent, which met on and off for like 18 years. And the bottom line was the Pope wants to focus on doctrine, and he gets into a fight with the main protector of the church, Charles V. But ultimately what they do is the Council of Trent does the following. They reaffirm the tradition of transubstantiation, all right? Scripture and tradition are authorities. Faith and good works are needed for salvation. Luther said justification by faith alone, believing is enough. 7 sacraments, which a lot of them rejected. And they said purgatory and indulgences were upheld. Purgatory, for those I don't think anyone doesn't know, means where the souls go sort of as a halfway house until they either eventually might get into heaven after whatever time they have to be there to purify themselves. Because
I never understood why would a soul go to purgatory and then not ultimately go to heaven? Why not just put them straight in hell then? I never understood.
Well, first of all, they could stay in purgatory indefinitely.
I guess.
That's
I guess.
I mean, that's how I understand purgatory.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I mean, if there are any other questions, it's getting a little late here.
Yeah, no, I think you did amazing, Daddy. You were awesome.
I hope so. I don't know. I mean,
thank you very, very much. I'm gonna wrap this show up over here. I think that we can put a cap on it, and yeah, I'll do a quick. Steve Gosney is saying that purgatory is temporary. It's not indefinite. So anyway, Dad, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. You're awesome and amazing. And
I don't know about that. I don't know this too well. I mean, honestly, I know a little more about some other things. But anyway, all right, whatever.
Right. Okay. All right. And I'm going to put a bow on this. Those of you who are, please, if you can hit the like and share and subscribe, all that other good stuff, drop a comment. That feeds the algorithm. I need all the algorithm help I can get right now. Most of you are aware of the fact that I'm streaming the Karen Reed trial. If you haven't caught it yet, if you haven't caught any sampling of it yet, it's this
What
trial.
is that? Can you tell us? Tell me.
Sure. Yeah, the Karen Reed trial is Karen Reed was dating a police officer by the name of John O'Keefe. And one night the two of them go drinking and carousing around on January 28th, I guess, technically, 2022. And they're doing that's a Friday night, and they're basically, and she gets, according to the opening statement from the district attorney, she says that she had no fewer than 8 drinks in a span of 2 or 3 hours. And after they go from one bar to a second bar, they decide that they're going to meet up at another party at a friend's house and they're all police officers. All these people who are here are involved in this story are police officers, not Karen Reed, but basically all the men that you hear about in this story are police officers. And that according to forensics, they could see from tracking her car and his geolocation with his phone, that they pulled up into the driveway of Officer Brian Albert, and they're sitting there for a couple of minutes, and then he gets out of his car, walks like 50 yards up the driveway, and she basically puts her car in reverse, slams backwards at hitting the gas pedal like 3/4 hard as she can, and later on admits that she's upset when he dies, that the last thing she ever said was a fight. So their speculation is that she ran him over. And then it's a snowy night. It had started snowing. There was a blizzard that was supposed to be incoming. At 5 o'clock in the morning, this is all according to the state. At 5 o'clock in the morning, she basically starts calling some of their mutual friends, wives of various people and mutual friends, and one of them is this woman named Jennifer McCabe, and another is Kerry Roberts. And she starts saying that she's freaked out, that she thinks that John was hit by a snowplow, and that they need to go looking for them. They need to go look at that. He didn't come home to take care. He was supposed to be doing some babysitting duties, and he would never miss out on that. And that she had, left him, and that she didn't know where he was, and that she was all freaked out. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, they start traipsing around Canton, which is near Boston, and looking for him. And she tries to retrace her steps, and that she identifies his body before anyone else can see his body. But she's like, "Oh my God, that's him laying there on the ground," and that they call the police, and that she's telling the EMT, I hit him, and that she's screaming that she hit him with her car, and then they find around the body all these fragments from her tail light, and her tail light's broken, and they find all these fragments from the tail light around his body, and that she ran him over because she was angry at him, and then she hit and ran. She left the scene of an accident. Those are 2 of the charges. The third one is vehicular manslaughter, that she was drunk and that's why she ran him over, and it wasn't intentional, but that she accidentally ran over. That's the opening statement from the state. The defense gets up there and says there never was that John O'Keefe did not die as a result of getting hit by a car. In fact, there never was any car collision at all. There was no car collision. He went into the Officer Brian Albert's house and must have been attacked by a dog, because what they're going to tell you are scrapes from getting hit in his upper arm from the car. Are completely. You're going to hear evidence that's going to show you that it's not result from hitting a car, but that that it comes from an animal, and that that when they searched the area around John O'Keefe, his body, they searched it once, twice, and it's only on the third time that they found 27 shards of a tail light. And it turns out that the officer who's overseeing this investigation, and this is a name you're going to need to remember throughout this trial, is Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor, who's good friends with Brian Albert. Oh, and Jen McCabe is the sister of Brian Albert, meaning the woman who's helping him look for this hole for the body it's found on her brother's lawn. Right? That's the house they were supposed to be going in there. Michael Proctor did such a bad job investigating this that he has since been fired by the police department because of how many different ways he botched this investigation. And one can only suspect that this was intentional, that he didn't bother interviewing the homeowner who lived in the house. And this homeowner, who is a first responder himself, never steps outside during the entire time that there's several police cars there, a woman shrieking about there being a dead body, and the person who was supposed to come to his party and never shows up there is laying dead on his front lawn. And this first responder doesn't dare step out of his house. We should also mention that Jen McCabe at 2:30 in the morning, 4 hours before his body was found, was Google searching how long does it take to die from hypothermia. And the speculation that the defense wants you to believe is that he went into that party, had some sort of altercation, got bashed in the back of his head inside the house, and that was dragged outside and left to die in the cold to cover up that it wasn't the police who actually killed him. In fact, you're going to hear testimony from a snowplow operator who says he drove by that house. He was dropped off at 1 o'clock in the morning. He drove by at 3 o'clock in the morning by that house to plow the area, and there's no body there. Which supposedly he was run over at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then he's found at 6 o'clock in the morning. So he's like, so leads you to question, how the heck would a body not be there at 3 in the morning and then be found there at 6 o'clock in the morning? So and all these changing testimonies that are going on and on. So many weird things are happening where it's like when I'm listening to this, it feels like it's Murder on the Orient Express. That everyone here is involved in. I think Karen Reed may be involved. I think Brian Albert's involved.
What's the motive?
So as far as why the police did it, that's unknown. I haven't heard anything on that. This is the second retrial of this situation here. But so many of them seem to be covering for each other with the way they've been testifying. It's only 2 days old. The first witness that comes out, because this is a retrial, the first time they had a hung jury. So these people all testified once before, and he basically starts. He says that, oh yeah, she said I hit him, and the defense counsel's like, 3 times? He's like, yeah, 3 times. Well, at the last trial, when you testified there, you said she only said it twice. He's like, yeah, I remember better now. You remember better now? 3 years removed from the incident that you did 2 years removed from the incident? So he's like, yeah, my memory improved. Your memory improved? Really? Really? It's like, it sounds like a style, like the guy's like making this stuff up. Then you have this other woman who testifies today, the woman who was driving around with him. She says things like that she testified earlier, because there's this whole Google search that Jen McCabe made for how long it takes to die in hypothermia. Apparently, she does another search for that after they find the body, meaning how long. And she claimed that Karen Reed told her, Google search, how long does it take to die from hypothermia? And the thought process that the defense is going to be presenting is along the lines that Jen knew that her phone had that Google search on it, so she wanted to do a second Google search after the body was located to help cover up the fact that she had done a Google search 4 hours before she was supposed to know John O'Keefe is on that lawn. It's like a soap opera where it's like you're trying, and it's a murder mystery whodunit. And it's a crazy trial where every time there's a cross-examination, it seems like someone's going to admit that, oh, yeah, I lied. Oh, yeah, I lied under oath. Oh, yeah, I lied to this police officer. Oh, yeah, I totally changed my story from what I said a year ago. It's crazy. So I urge every one of you who, if you enjoy watching trials at all, you join me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. It's day 3 of this trial. This is supposed to last 6-7 weeks. This is just a popcorn.
Where are you where the trial is? Where are you?
What do you mean? I'm streaming it from home. It's on YouTube, and I restream and I give commentary while I'm watching it, so you can catch it right here on this channel, 9 a.m. That's why when you were calling me today, it's difficult to reach me because I basically am streaming for 7-8 hours a day before I do my night stream now.
Wow. All right. Anyway, all right. Let you get some rest. All right.
Anyway, I thank you for joining me, Dad. I love talking to you always, and all the more so here in front of these fine people.
Okay, be well.
And I thank you. Have a good night, Daddy. I love you. And
all the best.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Good night. And those of you who have a chance to catch me tomorrow when we do this thing called the Karen retrial that starts at 9 a.m. We take a little break for lunch. I urge you to come check it out with me. We have a good time, and we're gonna laugh it up and just be mind blown by some of the testimony. Every time there's any sort of cross examination, it seems like there's just a minefield of Alan Jackson defense counsel just ripping these folks apart. That's all going to resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm going to be creating those links. You'll find links to it at goodlogic.locals.com, because you should never rely on getting notifications from YouTube or Rumble, because let's just face it, for one reason or another, they go missing. Kind of like evidence popping up out of nowhere in Canton. My notifications, mysterious things happen. So you can always find me and notifications about when and where I am at goodlogic.locals.com. Please like, share, subscribe. You know what they say, lab meat's not for you, it's for they, them, not for you, and do not eat the bugs. Have a good night, everyone, and as always, Godspeed. Did I miss locals again? I did. Joe, if you have time, let's hear your father's thoughts on tares sown with Lord's wheat. On the tares sown with the Lord's wheat. I don't know what that means. The tares sown with the Lord's wheat? I don't know. I'm sorry, Sanglant, that I missed that. Tears. Tears sown with the Lord's. Is that what you mean? Tears? I think you mean tears, maybe. That comes from David. King David wrote that. That it's not the Lord's wheat. It's that if you plant in Zarmadima, if you plant with tears, you'll reap with joy. I don't know that he has any unique thoughts on that. I assume that's what you mean. But that comes from Psalms. In Hebrew, it's Hazorim Bedima Barina Yiktoru. If you plant with tears, you'll harvest with great joy. And that's just a reminder how important it is to work hard. That's all I think you can get from that. But I hope that gave you some sort of. There you go. Now I got it. Good night, everyone. Godspeed.